All right, we are going to be reading for day 14 of We Leave the Streets, starting with Samson in 12th grade as a senior in high school. It was the summer between junior and senior year. School was out, and Samson, glad to be away from homework and teachers and the academic responsibilities for a while, enjoyed kicking it with his friends in the corner. They knew the most dangerous thing to do in Newark was to stand on the corner and mind your own business. Anything could happen, a drive-by shooting, a fight, police harassment. The corner was a welcome center for it all. Nevertheless, that's where they hung out every day. Samson had been warned many times by his mother to stay off the corner. There's nothing but trouble out there. Whatever happened to you hanging out with Reggie? You need to get back into Kung Fu. Those boys you hang out with now aren't going anywhere with their life. Remember, you make your bed, you gotta lay in it. Samson knew his mother was right. She had been through many struggles, and he realized that she really wanted a better life for him. She tried to keep him on a straight path, but the streets were getting the best of him. George and Remick had jobs that summer, so the three friends did not spend as much time together during vacation, and Samson fell back into old habits with old friends. He found work at McDonald's, which gave him some spending money, but little else. The desire to have more and to have it quickly was overpowering in a neighborhood where drug dealers drove expensive cars and walked around decorated in diamonds and gold, as commonly as trees wore leaves of green. Man, I need to make a move, Samson said, flexing his muscles and stretching his neck. He felt like a toy wound up too tightly. Got any ideas? Rob somebody before they rob you, joked a kid named Buddy. Hey, you got a good idea there, man. Why don't we rob some drug dealers? They got plenty of cash, another dude suggested. You crazy, man? They got guns and will shoot you dead before you get a chance to spend a dime of their money, Samson said. Nah, man, Buddy replied. We don't rob the experienced drug dudes. We hit the young ones, the stupid ones, the kids. Yeah, that sounds like a plan to me, another boy in the group said. We hit him hard, hit him quick, and get out of there before they know what happened. Samson was doubtful it would work, but it sounded so easy. It wasn't wrong, he figured. They wouldn't be selling any drugs, just taking money away from the kids who did sell the stuff. It would be like the Robin Hoods of their community, but taking from those who are poisoning the area with drugs. The first couple of times they tried it, everything went smoothly. Samson and his boys dressed all in black and drove to a street corner where they knew drug dealers hung out. One of the boys always pulled out a gun to scare the kids into obedience. Samson did not like the inclusion of the gun in the process because he felt it increased their chances of things going wrong. The last thing Samson needed was for someone to get shot in all the chaos. Nonetheless, the gun was simply part of the scene, as natural to him and his friend as pulling out a candy bar from his pocket. Samson and his friends would snatch the money from the unsuspecting young dealers and jump back into their car before anyone had a chance to respond. They split the money 4 ways and exulted in the ease and glory of it all. Nobody got hurt. Next time they went out, Samson was the driver. Even though somewhere deep down he felt uncomfortable about what they were doing, the excitement of the attack and the exhilaration of the take were too much to resist. They drove around until they spotted a group of teenagers hanging out on a corner. They knew the kids there had to be dealers. Samson, Buddy, and the other 2 guys jumped out of Samson's car, preparing to beat up the kids. Buddy pulled out a gun. Empty your pockets, he demanded harshly. This time, just as the kids were fearfully handing over the money, another car, a brown Ford or a Chevrolet, unexpectedly pulled up next to them. In that car were 4 older dudes, heavier and tougher looking than the kids they were used to dealing with. They looked at Samson and his friend suspiciously. Samson saw with alarm that the car had a police radio mounted on the floor. Cops, he shouted wildly to his friends, each of them whom took off running. Suddenly, police cars appeared from all directions, sirens blaring, lights flashing, and instead of running, Samson walked slowly, appearing to be unfazed by the commotion. No one stopped him. He kept walking, hoping and praying that he would get away. Finally, he made it to the corner and began to run. When he got far enough away, he stopped, caught his breath, and wiped the sweat from his brow. He waited half an hour or so, then doubled back to the scene to pick up his car. It was gone. There was no trace of the dealers, the police, or the crowds of people who had gathered to watch the excitement. The street corner was deserted. Not sure what to do, Samson hailed a cab and went home. He told no one what had gone down that afternoon, and he slept very little that night, worrying about what would happen when his name was connected to that car. The next morning, he made some calls and found out that his car had been towed by the Montclair Police Department. They asked him to come in for questioning. All 3 of the boys he'd been with the day before had been arrested. Samson finally confided in his older sister, who drove him to the police station. When they arrived, Samson was taken into a small, dark room inside police headquarters. In it were a table and 2 chairs. Samson sat down on one side of the table. A detective sat down on the other and flipped on a tape recorder. People say you were involved in an incident yesterday, the detective began. What incident was that? Samson replied, appearing clueless. Marshall, the officer said, you might as well come clean. Your boys already told us the whole story. Sampson took a deep breath, realizing it had to be true. The detective had called him by his middle name, Marshall. Only his family and friends knew him by that name. Sampson thought about the code of the streets. What happened to the loyalty, the no-snitch policy? How dare they rat on him? For the first time, Sampson realized that the streets had no love for him. Sampson sighed and said, yeah, I was there, but we didn't hurt nobody. Did you take their money? It was drug money. I repeat, did you take their money? Yes, sir. Did one of you have a gun? I never touched the gun, Sampson declared. I repeat, did one of you have a gun? Yes, sir. Sampson slumped in his chair in defeat. He thought, I knew that gun would get us in trouble. I am placing you under arrest. Because a gun was involved in the commission of this crime, you are being charged with armed robbery and will be sent to a juvenile detention center in Newark. Sampson was taken to the center, a nice name for a jail. It had 4 units, based on the type of crimes committed. Sampson was placed in Unit 1, the section where juveniles arrested for violent crimes were assigned. How did I get myself in a place like this, he thought miserably. How could I let down my parents, the rest of my family? How am I going to tell Ramick and George? He did not know at the time that Ramick had been in a similar situation just a few months before. All he knew was that he never felt so alone, so out of place, so angry with himself. He had lots of time to think as he lay awake on those hot summer nights, unable to sleep on the hard cot in the skinny, uncomfortable cell. It was tiny, with barely enough space to fit a body in. He had no pillow or blanket, not even a sheet to cover him. The thin mattress had been slept on by many previous bodies and was decorated with saturated urine stains from former residents. The boys he'd been arrested with had also been incarcerated, but not in the same location where Sampson was held. He didn't know where they were, but he didn't care. They had ratted him out and left him to suffer the consequences alone. Sampson resolved that if he ever got out, he'd stay away from dudes like that, but he knew it would be difficult. He wondered how George and Ramick were spending their summer. He thought quite a bit about the plans they had made together to try for the program at Seton Hall. Years of college or years of jail? There was no comparison. Sampson had once asked George, who always seemed focused on the goal of making it to college, how he did it. I just believe it can happen, George had said. But how? Sampson had insisted. It just seems easier to give up. No one from your neighborhood ever makes it out. You're either gunned down or arrested, or you get some crazy disease. Everybody fails, he had declared. But I don't plan to fail, George had replied with a grin. Here in this hot jail cell, failure walked with Sampson every day. It was difficult to see a bright outcome. His parents visited him regularly and hired a lawyer. Sampson felt bad that he had to face his parents in that kind of setting where they could visit him only for limited periods of time. It hurt him that he had caused them so much pain. What has the lawyer told you lately? Sampson asked his mother during one visit. They're talking about trying you as an adult, Sampson's mother said with fear in her voice. That means a possible sentence of 3 to 10 years in an adult prison. 3 to 10 years? Aren't they crazy? Sampson replied. Sampson was terrified at the thought of being locked up for so long. Just the few weeks he had spent in the detention center were more time than he ever wanted to. The lawyer worked furiously to get the changes lessened. Just before Sampson was scheduled to go to court, the lawyer told him that he had worked out a possible deal. If you plead guilty as a juvenile, then you'll get a 2-year suspended sentence and 2 years of probation. What does that mean? Sampson asked, unsure of the details of the legal system. Will I have a record? The lawyer replied, if you stay out of trouble, I mean squeaky clean, you hear me, then you won't have to serve any time in jail. And since you are still a juvenile, the crime won't appear on your permanent record. Sampson breathed deeply with relief. He stood before the judge. His mother sat not far from him behind the wooden partition. How do you plead? The judge said. Guilty, Your Honor, Sampson said. His heart thudded and his mouth felt like it was full of cotton. And the judgment of this court is to sentence you to 2 years suspended sentence and 2 years probation, dependent on... A few weeks later, Sampson stood by the basketball hoops in Dayton Street. Buddy, one of the other guys who'd been involved in the robbery, bounced the basketball. He was out on bail, awaiting his trial. What's up, man? Chillin', Sampson replied. You get off? Buddy asked. Suspended sentence. You lucky. Helps that you're not 18 yet, Buddy replied. He was older and had 2 prior offenses. He was going to do time in jail. He shot a few hoops. What you going to do now? Buddy asked. I'm thinking about going to college, Sampson said with pride. Me and my partners from high school made a pact, and we've been talking about it. Buddy and a couple other guys who were shooting hoops with them stopped the game and broke down laughing. They laughed so hard they had to catch their breath. Man, that ain't never going to happen, Buddy said. Nobody from around here goes to college. Do you know who you are and where you're from? Sampson said firmly, well, I will be the first. In that moment, he realized he had to look beyond them, beyond their ridicule, that means picking on him, and find a way to make it past the impossibilities. He left them laughing. That was the last time Samson hung out with his boys. Eventually, all of the boys who had been involved with Samson in the robbery received jail time. Samson had been spared for some reason he did not yet understand. He was ready to find out. All right, now this is the end of high school, and this is all three of them. You better get in, Samson said to George and Ramick. Hey man, all three of us will get in, I'm sure of it, Ramick replied. We're in this together, George reminded them as he and Ramick worked on their applications for Seton Hall one afternoon in the school library. It's going to happen. They were seniors getting close to graduation, full of brash confidence and hidden fears. Yeah, right, man. If it hadn't been for our pact, I might not have ever even tried for this, Samson admitted. But I ain't going to let you two jokers get some free education and leave me on the street to sell pencils. What did you put on page 3, question 7? Ramick asked as he chewed on a pencil. Oh, the question about money saved in a bank account? I put, ain't got none, Samson replied with a laugh. Last time I saw the inside of a bank was when they were giving out free cookies to promote their new services. He sighed then. I think we got a chance at doing this, he said seriously. We have an opportunity to be something in life. I have a feeling this is right for us, man, George replied. How can you be so positive and sure about all the stuff all the time? Ramick asked him. I don't know. I just believe it can happen. One of us might fail if we try to do this alone, but 3 of us together just can't be beat. Well, I'm still applying to Howard too, Ramick said. I gotta have a backup plan, and I hate leaving my boys Hassan and Ahi. I'm mailing my application to Seton Hall tomorrow, George announced. Mailed mine yesterday, Samson told them. Well, if that's the case, I better get mine in too, Ramick said. The applications from the 3 of us will blow everybody else right off the table. They laughed and headed out to their next class. Partially from the spirit of their pact and partially from their fear of failure, the 3 each used each other as crutches when one felt weak, as tools when another needed information, and as weapons to face the future together as they headed into the unknown. In the following weeks, each of them was called to Seton Hall, located in South Orange, New Jersey, a wealthy suburb, for an in-depth and personal interview. George was called first. He and his mother found their way back through what seemed like a huge campus, full of large brick buildings and perfectly kept lawns, to the office of Carla Dixon, the student development specialist for the program. Barely 5 feet tall, with a warm, smiling, brown face, she seemed much larger to George as he sat down in her tiny office. Why do you want to be a doctor, George? She asked. I've always had this hidden desire to do something in medicine, George admitted earnestly. Ever since my first visit to the dentist, I've had major dental work, I thought being a dentist would be the best job in the world. He grinned, a dreamy look of hopefulness on his face. And if you become a dentist, what then? She asked. I'd like to start a clinic in Newark, I think. Lots of folks where I grew up didn't have access to good dental care, so they just ignore their teeth until it's too late. I'd like to help fix that problem. Carla scribbled furiously in her notes, nodding with approval. The program encourages minority doctors we train to return to urban communities to work, she told George. I'm impressed. George breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed as he answered questions about grades and baseball in high school. You know, I have 2 friends who have applied to this program also, George told her. Oh, really? Carla replied. Yeah, we kind of made a pact with each other to help us make it, like a little support system for 3. We figured that if there are 3 of us, we won't feel so alone and we'll have each other for support if we mess up. Again, Carla scribbled that down and nodded vigorously. This is very good, she said almost to herself. She asked for the names of Ramick and Samson and made more notes on George's application. She then stood up, shook George's hand, and thanked him for coming. It'll take several weeks to process all the applications, she said. You will be informed of your acceptance or rejection before school gets out in June. George left her office feeling confident and hopeful. Samson and Ramick had their interviews with Carla in the next few days. Each of them mentioned the other 2 in their interviews, although none of them knew it at the time. On a warm Friday morning in early April, Samson walked into the senior homeroom carrying an envelope. He looked at George and Ramick and smiled. I got my letter from Seton Hall, he said. Did you get in? George asked. I don't know. I didn't open it. You mean you had the thing since yesterday and you haven't opened it? George asked. I got my letter yesterday too, and I opened it right away. Did you make it? Ramick asked. George looked triumphant. Sure did. Then he looked at the other 2, afraid perhaps they had not been accepted. What about you, Ramick? Ramick grinned. I'm in like sin. But I also got accepted to Howard yesterday. He looked a little confused. But if all 3 of us get accepted, I think I'll go to Seton Hall with you 2. We made a pact, didn't we? The other 2 nodded seriously. Well, open the letter, Sam, George and Ramick said at the same time. Samson slowly opened the envelope and folded the letter and read it. He refolded it and replaced it in the envelope. What did it say, Sam? George asked. I'm not telling. George and Samson proceeded to tackle him and get the letter out of his hands. Okay, I got in. Of course I got in. The three friends looked at each other with exhilaration and satisfaction as the bell rang for the first class of the day. Now what? Reemick asked, suddenly serious. Figure it out as it happens, I guess, George said. The part that makes it not so scary is that we figure it out together, Sampson added. The rest of the school year disappeared in a flash. Last-minute school projects, prom, parties. On graduation day, dressed in burgundy caps and gowns, Raymond Hunt, Sampson Davis, and George Jenkins marched proudly down the aisle to the thunderous applause of their parents and friends. Cameras flashed, speeches were made, families cheered as the names of their children were called. These students were success stories, the ones who had not dropped out or ended up in jail or strung out on drugs. These graduates were the result of much prayer and hope and just plain luck. Parents wept with thankfulness. The families of George, Sampson, and Raemick were especially proud that day. Not only had their sons survived the streets of Newark, but they were headed to college and planning to become doctors, a dream most kids could barely imagine. Caps were thrown in the air, and then it was suddenly over. The end of day 14.